things like that. Anything that you've listened to since you've been here? I mean, Michelle gave a great presentation on dealing with preschool kids, setting up a preschool program. But here you've got some of the most knowledgeable people in the world on these subjects, so take advantage of that. Who has the first question? Can I ask a question? Yes.
Question to you. You've been in the States, done a lot of clubs. Sorry. This is a question for Emma. I know she's been in the States for a few weeks. She's coming from Australia. I just want maybe her to share her perceptions of how clubs maybe are different here than in Australia.
Sure. Definitely, the facilities are just amazing here. So I walk into every club and every facility I've been into, and my first thing is, wow, the entrance, the pro shop, the layout, the setup, the different court surfaces, indoor, outdoor. Back at home, we've got, more, where our club membership fees are, $100 for the year for a family membership. They're run usually by local councils, sometimes a little bit run down. Unfortunately, we've had to move mainly to mod grass surface because of the drought that we went through a couple of years ago. So, we don't have a lot of even the onto-car courts left, teaching the kids how to slide and so forth. So that's the first thing that I saw. Then if we move into a programs perspective, I see a lot of really passionate people that want to do a good job in the space. And I think that sometimes that's not always filtering down into the delivery of the program. So that's just from an observation perspective. So when I'm watching the actual under 10s program, I'm not seeing necessarily it living some of the core principles of what I think a good under 10s program looks like, and some of what Tennis Australia is certainly trying to implement as well. And that's similar to Australia. So from that perspective, so they're the two main things that I've observed.
Let me ask Butch, if you're going to set up a 10 and under program at a club or a public facility, what would be some essential elements that a 10 and under program, a quality 10 and under program has to have?
Yeah, Kirk says, he whispers, says, have some 10 and under kids. Yeah, that's a good idea. But I'm not talking about 10 and under, I'm talking about anything. Henry Ford made a statement once. He says, you can burn down my buildings and destroy my equipment, but give me my people and I'll build it again. So everything has to start with that. So surround yourself with good people, and that's, for sure on court, but it goes beyond that if you create a welcoming environment, because in the end, we have to create something where the children, the family are comfortable, and they feel good there, they feel safe and that. So to me, that is absolutely an essential. And then that's followed by, of course, setting up a bit of a pathway. And Midtown, many years ago, we chose to have it called our JDP, our Junior Development Pathway, and that's our logo. And Mike and I go around saying that maybe it's not the best logo, but it was really like a commitment to the concept that the child starts here and this is where they're going. So for a family or for the parents, for them to understand that there really is something planned for your child over the next 5 or 6 years, I think that's really key. And then, of course, development of curriculum so that we actually have well orchestrated and activities that are developmentally based for the children, so that they learn through the activities, and we do a good job with that. But it really comes, I'm going to go back to number one and say, all of my success in my life, if I've ever had it, is because of other people that I've been able to associate with. So that's what I hang my hat on.
Thank you, Butch. Kurt, can you talk a little bit about the the present state and the future state of coaching education in this country? Because I know that's a passion for you.
Okay, coaching education. It's going to take a different look. I don't know if anybody's aware, probably many of you are aware, that there's going to be certification or education before certification now that is going to be prepared, is being prepared right now by the USTA, USPTA, and PTR. And it's a combination of online courses and face-to-face workshop, so pretty significant. So a lot of the questions, you know, how do we get more people? How do we, and interesting, I just read some statistics about the top countries of soccer players, and there was a direct correlation between the number of coaches they had and the number of World Cup wins they had. And that's not surprising, but we need more and we need better coaches. And so that's the intent of everything that we've done preparing these courses. We've had a lot of people in this room involved in what we're doing, and we're going to be trying to take education to how people learn. So you're all here for a workshop, but most people, how they get their information, they get their information on computers and on handheld devices. So we're making that available. That will be entertaining and educational at the same time. So we're looking forward to rolling out these courses in January. And if you're already certified, you won't have to take them, but they're going to be free to everybody in this room. So if you want to take them, or if you have parents, or if you have organizers for after-school programs, if you have after-school teachers, they're all going to be free to anybody that wants to take them. So we're trying to hit all the right buttons here, where we're making it affordable, we're making it time efficient, we're making it real time, and we're making it as entertaining as we can and as exciting as we can. So Butch has seen the courses, and they're pretty good. We're pretty happy with the content, and we hope this is a start, and then we'll be able to develop on this catalog of courses in the future.
Thank you, Kirk. Julio, I'm kind of going down the line here, if you can tell. You've got a very successful program in Mississippi. You're kind of the go-to guy for high performance in Mississippi, and then you've become the go-to guy for 10 and under in Mississippi. You're also the chairman of the USTA Southern 10 and under committee. What message would you have for the pros here as far as helping the committee and helping the 10 and under initiative in the South?
Educate yourself. No, seriously, it's completely, you have to go out of your comfort level. There's too many of us out there still very comfortable with what we do, the parameters that we do, how we've been able to make a great living for so many years, knowing, in reality, knowing so little, because the consumer itself didn't know enough. Those of you who are here today, I applaud you for being here, because you're taking the initiative, you're taking the time. Influence others around you. Help them understand that if they don't jump in the wagon and they don't go educate themselves and gain the knowledge, they will fall behind eventually, and they'll become like dinosaurs in our industry. Have I answered your question?
I've got a question for you about
Yes, ma'am.
your high performance kids and dealing with parents, because I got some triplets. They're just going to turn 9 this year. They've been playing 10 and under ball for the last year. They're very good. They're good athletes. 2 of the 3 are very good athletes. One trips over the line, but she's progressing. And the father actually had said something to me, because one of the junior kids, I won't say his name because he's actually got a high ranking, he was commenting on his dad being psychotic. And I just kind of looked at him and I'm like, and this father's extremely well known in our area because of his body language and everything when his kids are playing. And I'm talking low level tournaments. And I guess it's how do you deal with this? They're members of my club, they play adult league tennis. Losing is not acceptable to the family.
Okay, start off with the concept that losing in tennis happens just as much as often as winning happens. So if they want to play a sport in which they're not going to lose, tell them to direct them towards Monopoly or backgammon, but not to play a sport where they're going to be against somebody else, that they don't have control of their skills. When they play tennis matches, I don't control how good you can be. I can only control what I can do. So you have a challenge in front of you, because and they're members of your club.
And they're good. I mean,
would they have
state sectionals, adult league?
Okay.
And that's the problem. They don't lose very much. Their parents.
The parents don't lose.
They don't lose very much.
Okay.
And they almost always play doubles. So there's at least that harder effect there too.
But we're talking about the kids,
and
right?
And the kids are all playing singles, and so the reality hasn't quite set in that they're 8.
Are you in a situation? Are you in a country club?
No.
Okay.
We're
Okay. So it's a public facility. the reason I'm asking you is I'm trying to determine the kind of leverage they would have over you losing or keeping your job. If they have a lot of leverage, if you're at a country club and you have a board, you have to be a lot more subtle, you have to be a better politician to be able to do something about it. If you're not, and you're in a similar situation to the one I'm at, where I'm in a public partner facility, where I only have one boss, and as long as the bottom line is pro shop, as long as the revenue in the pro shop is up on a yearly basis, I'm safe outside regardless of what it is I'm doing. I can do whatever I want. In my situation, I will go very aggressively, and I will bring to their attention that they're going to live a very miserable life for the rest of their life, and their kids will be in couches, talking to therapists in a few years from now, if they don't open, if they don't, or the pool guy, if they don't open their eye and understand tennis, okay? I've gone as back as showing to some parents, doing analysis and look at statistics of like how successful was Federer in his first year on tour. You know how many matches Federer won in his first year on tour? 2. That can be tracked. And turns out to be supposedly the best player in the history of the game. But you gotta, the key here is educating yourself so you can present some facts. And even when you educate yourself and you present the facts, there are still those who you're gonna take to the water and they still will choose to not drink and die. And you just have to be moving on. But then you gotta find a way to, how do you cover yourself? How do you cover yourself? Because if you're in a country club situation, you don't want to get fired, you don't want to lose your job. If you're in a situation where you're a business owner, you own a club, then you can really do whatever you want. But bottom line, tennis is a sport in which you do not control outcome. You only control your intentions when you walk on the court to do that day. So it cannot be outcome oriented. It has to be about process oriented. So it's how do we enjoy we enjoy the ups and the downs. We can not only enjoy the ups. That's called psychotic in our society, and they take medication.
Well, like he's all about, oh no, I just wanted to get the ball right, but then when it comes down to it,
okay, so
playing the matches, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I mean, it's got to the point where they're going to cheat because they don't want to lose a point.
Yeah.
And even in practice, one of them was crying because she was arguing with both the girls on the other side. Her partner was one of her sisters. My pro, who was standing on the baseline, and me, who was at the net post, who all said that the ball was in, but it was out,
Everything you're describing right now, if it's as bad as you're describing, myself, I run away from it. I can't help them. It's a dysfunctional family. They're going to be like that forever. I'm a very caring person. I like to help people. So what happens is they'll suck me into their whole destruction, and I start going home, and I'm unhappy. And I then have myself to go see a therapist to deal with him. Not because you're laughing. I'll tell you, I see a therapist probably once every 3 months because I get lost blending the lines because I start caring more about, I care more about people's kids than they do themselves. And then it destroys me. So I have to keep myself grounded. So my advice from what you're telling me, there's no hope. You describe it as a situation. You're not going to be able to educate them. You can't reach them. Do your lessons, earn your revenue, and move on. Did I answer your question?
First, can I answer something as well? But it's not going to be as funny as what he said, whatever happens, right? A couple of things. One is, I always tell parents that their kid is definitely not going to be a professional tennis player. Guaranteed. So what do they want their kid to get from tennis? And then they normally list the things like, oh, okay, I want them to be disciplined, I want respect, I want to gain respect, I want all of those things. And then I say to them, okay, let's flip that on its head and say, your kid is going to make it. So now describe the qualities that you see in the top players in the world. They come up with exactly the same list. Independent discipline. So I say, okay, if that's important whether your kid's going to be a professional or not be a professional, can we just focus on that? Yeah, and the other one is trying to get the parents to understand that what to be competitive really is. So my little catchphrase that I use with them all the time is, being competitive is to love the battle more than the victory. To actually love fighting more than it is to love winning. Winning is just glory. Yeah. So someone who loves to win will want to win 6-love, 6-love, and against a lesser opponent. We know that that's boring. So it's that idea of it's actually wanting to be in a tough situation, enjoying. I often do it within conferences where we do the arm wrestle bit, You know, and it's enjoying that bit when you're kind of arms wobbling at the top there because you're not quite sure what's going to happen. You have to learn to. For the kids, they're going to struggle to separate the performance from the outcome, and that's where his area is blurred. Because if you said to him, "Okay, Rafa's coming to the club tomorrow. Do you want to play?" He'll go, "Yeah," and you go, "But you're going to lose." And I say, "Well, but the experience is. I'm just going to challenge myself to get his serve back." Yeah, because actually you can't win by focusing on winning. You can only win by focusing on performance. So you're starting to go into that whole area of getting them to emphasise performance over outcome. The unfortunate thing for the kids is that's the area that they're struggling with, and clearly that's the area that he's struggling with. When it's us, we'd all be able to focus on that performance part. So
I never ask them if they won. Said, how did it go? How did
Yeah.
you play? How did you play? I tried very, very hard not to ever ask any of the players, did you win?
But he probably does. And even if he does the best well in the world, he'll probably say, "I don't care if you win or lose," which is the biggest trap parents fall into. They say, "I don't care if you win or lose." Well, if you understand that children under 10 most of the time don't hear negative words, just take the negative word out of that sentence. Yeah. And the other thing is, the kids sitting there going, "Yeah, you damn well do, because that's why you said it in the first place." So, you know, there's a whole load of things, unfortunately, we need to go to Julio's therapist in order to sort our own brains out so that we can help them sort our brains out. But there's a few little things you could try, but Julio's probably right. And like I said yesterday, if you really have a major problem with a parent, fire them. And unfortunately, you won't be able to teach their kid, but that's just... I've done that 5 times, and 3 times the parents come crawling back on their knees saying, "Please coach my kid again."
And that's the problem, is that nobody else really wants to touch them, but they're really, really good because they don't want to deal with him, and they just happen to be out in the club. But the girls are good. I mean, they're really, they love. They've got a court near their house. They've got their own ball machine. And they want to be out there every day. We get mad when somebody's on their court in their complex.
Well, if the worst gets the worst, get very drunk, take really embarrassing pictures of them and keep them in your phone.
Lana, one of the, I think we've got to, in these advanced programs, lay out everything for the parents before they come into the program. So, one of our kids played basketball when he was playing in high school, and he was fortunate, or some parents didn't feel less fortunate enough to have a college coach for 1 year who was the son of a famous college coach, and they were in between changing universities. So he had it for 1 year. This coach had never coached high school before. And, so he did lay down some guidelines for the parents. So he had a meeting with the parents, and he says, I've always coached college. I've never coached high school. This is boys. He says, I tend to use a lot of bad language during the game and practice. So he said, I just wanted y'all to know that the headmaster has asked me to try to not use bad language, but there's probably no doubt that at some point this season I'm going to be cursing at your son pretty close to his face. And I just wanted you to know that ahead of time, that I'm going to try not to do that. But if you want to complain about that, complain to the headmaster, because I'm not going to take any calls from any of you the whole season. And the kids loved it, But yes, he cursed at all of them during the season. He was pretty close to it. He cursed at the referees, and they did well. But, he laid it all out ahead of time, because he knew what it was going to do. And that's just part of his coaching. And if we liked it or didn't like it. So I think letting them know that ahead of time, just like this parent comes in and, you say, or if your program, you say, well, one of the things I'd like the parents to do is, when you're with your child at a tournament, you don't, and after the match is over, win or lose, don't say anything to them about it for 30 minutes. Especially, or if the car ride's 3 hours, make it 3 hours. Don't say anything about the match unless they bring it up. And then later, if they bring it up, say things like that, just laying out the ground rules there for them. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to follow them. But if they don't follow them, then you can say, hey, this is part of what, it is to be in this program, is that you have to follow that. So.
I think this is a really important topic that everyone struggles with at some point. And it comes down a lot to the trust factor between you and the parent and you and the child. If that doesn't exist, you're not going to make a difference. Until you build that and both groups think that what you're saying is actually going to make a difference, I think that's when you can actually make an impact. And the people that work in high performance have dealt with those parents a a lot, and they're going to continue to be that. If you're going to always push them away and say, I'm not going to work with that type of parent, you may never have a good player. I mean, there's very few really high-level players that don't have that type of parent involved in some capacity. So it kind of comes down to sort of where do you draw the line? Everyone's in this room is going to be different. Some of you are going to embrace that, figure out a way to work with those, and others are going to be like, hey, that's way too much work and time. And it's true, you're going to spend hours and hours of unpaid time dealing with that. So it comes down to sort of where do you want to put your emphasis. And for many of you, it's not there. I totally understand, totally I get it. But for some of you, there may be interest in that world. And if you want to be good in that world, you're going to have to find solutions to some of these tough situations.
Maybe we need to hire a psychologist to come on board and just start counseling them. We had another player who was one of the top junior players, probably in the Midwest, and his father was so abusive to him verbally and emotionally that every time he walked out on the court to play an adult, he had an injury. Nobody really wanted to play against him. They loved playing with him because he was so good. He ended up playing in Florida, then he ended up playing for LSU for a very short period of time, and then quit the team because he couldn't handle it. Because I think that the damage had been done as a junior player so deep, and you hate to see that. And I know his father had quit playing tennis because he was so extreme that he couldn't control his own temper when he was playing. So he didn't, I guess, realize what he was doing to his son. And all of the top players in the area, the men that trained with this kid for fun, just to go out and hit with him so that he could have somebody to hit with him, were like, every time he comes out, as soon as his dad shows up, he's got an injury. He's got to stop playing.
Going back to what Mark said, keep in mind the parents, they're very similar. I find to be very similar to my 3 and my 6-year-old. What I find that works today to create the proper response doesn't work tomorrow. So you'll negotiate with them on some terms today. You feel you've accomplished something. You feel you've gotten them to understand. You've educated them. They get you. And tomorrow they show up, and the same thing that you talked the day before, somehow in a different way, comes right back at you. So don't get frustrated. It is an ongoing process. And like you said, if you want to do it, you have to be willing to deal with them.
Are they girls or boys?
Mine?
Yeah.
Girls.
See, that's why.
I've got triple boys too.
Boys are the same every day, girls are different every day. Secret to men and women.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, the national perception of tennis, if you ask, what's the state of tennis, okay? From the national media, the thing that comes up is there's no tennis players in the top 10, males, females, and it looks bad. Now, from my standpoint, we're going to have an outlier in the next 2-3 years, okay? Whether it's done where, we have these injuries, the Wall Street Journal comes out with something negative, whatever. What needs to be focused on is there were 18,000 women playing Thursday morning last week in Atlanta. That perception of the game, from a national standpoint, it hasn't been done well enough. And what do I tell a parent? I say, every tennis community that your child lives in, or every place your child lives in, will have a tennis community. I've lived in 8 different states. I've always embraced the tennis community. I've always had that. I get more satisfaction out of Mallory Archer, who didn't make the top 6 at St. Paul's Episcopal School varsity, is loving 4-0 tennis right now. And she's healthy, she's staying active because of that. And somehow that's being missed in the national, those of us within the fight every day, we know it to be true, okay? But when all we do is advertise during the US Open or whatever as a national body, and I know that's the time we do it, but there's gotta be a better way to market right now with child obesity, with all these things that we're dealing with, to point out the 18,000 women and look at the fitness, look at these ladies. Let's take a picture of these ladies, these 18,000 women in Atlanta on Thursday morning. And that's the strength of this game. And that's what we have going for it. Football, Kyle played last week, hurt his knee, playing soccer, okay? The competitive quality, you can play at 80 years old, unbelievable. And that is what we have that nobody else has. And somehow we're missing that still. And this is the perfect storm to tap into it. I'm not excited about 10 and under tennis because of the next Pete Sampras. I'm excited for the next Mallory Archer. That's what excites me.
Sorry, I thought you were going to go one way and you went the other way. And I was just going to say that I don't know of a single federation in the world that genuinely is solely responsible for producing tennis players. That's the first thing. But I know every single country in the world gets it in the year that they don't produce tennis players. I think that the nature of the whole thing, and you can talk about the marketing, you can talk about what the USTA does, but the only thing we really have control over is what's in our own backyard. And essentially, the power of tennis is in this room, and it's about everybody always speaking positively, always trying to move forward, always trying to do their best, and all understanding that the USTA or LTA or ITF or whatever country is not a them, it's an us. And actually everybody on board, if everyone did a little bit more, it's the whole 1% thing. If everybody just did 1% more, if everyone just did a little thing each day, then the whole thing gathers steam. But really, the people that we're really marketing to, the people that we're really talking to, are the people that you have contact with every day. They're the people you teach anyway. So if we're always positive in our own environments, that ripple starts. And you can do national marketing campaigns, and all these different people have done try to do all those things. But the reality is, we're in a relationship business, which is all about dealing with people on face-to-face thing. And if we can get up every morning, love what we do, and some days it is a job. You know, some days you go, I get to teach those kids today, right? Some days it is a job, but at the end of the day, if we can go and do that every day, and we can work together, and that's the other thing, because it's very easy, especially in a competitive environment like Atlanta, you know, to diss the guy down the road, or just, you know, if we can actually work together, the pool is way big enough for us all to have thriving businesses in tennis. We spend so much time knocking the USTA or knocking other things down, and all we really need to do is, look, you know, go away from this room and find 4 guys that you want to actually do something with and collaborate with in the next year, and do something together. Whether you run a tournament, whether you get your ladies together, whether you find another match for Mallory or whatever, you know, whatever you do, just do something together and keep doing it together and together and together and together. Unfortunately, we're all fall into the slot sometimes of taking a national federation like it's a drug pusher. We become addicted and we can become dependent. And actually, the USTA, like every federation, is a group of very, very passionate people trying to do the best that they possibly can. What they need on the ground is everybody else to be as passionate, trying to do the best that they possibly can. Will they always get it right? Nah, no one ever gets it always right. You know, I always say, I delivered a perfect tennis lesson in 1997 on July the 2nd at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's never happened since, right? So the reality is, you know, if we just all pull and just go, right, we're all going to do it a little bit, then we don't worry about the national media, because every time the national media speaks, we're going to go, yeah, but that's not what my people think. And everyone will know in the tennis world that they're talking crap. The only way forward. Now let someone official speak.
Let me get Sue. She had a question over here.
Actually, a question. I was just going to share about tennis. We work with a lot of high school girls, which we don't have a lot of parent issues. Seems like someone wants to do more than others. I was just going to share a name of a book that somebody gave me a few years ago, just dealing with parents, and it talked about the you can educate 98% of the parents, but there will always be the 2% that you just have to let go. And I just thought it was very interesting. It's called We're Going to the Olympics by Dr. Alan Goldberg.
Thank you, Sue.
I have a question for the panel. I'm talking specifically about the 8, 9, 10-year-old range. If you guys have one ball area that you use to develop your intermediate advanced level 10 under, would you go orange dot or green dot? Go 4 times the head, get rid of one. We need an option of one.
I have a related question. It's related. Everybody just
I'm thinking green dot full court as opposed to orange dot center line.
Okay, and we'll let them answer, but
This is
give a
very
follow-up.
related. Follow-up question to that is, Mike, I know in the past you've talked about not labeling 10 and under programs as high performance 10 and under. And I know within the USTA we talk about high performance 10 and under players. I wanted to get the panel's perspective on whether or not we should do that, because I think, Mike, you've made the point in the past that sometimes your second tier or 10 and under kids turn out to be the best.
Let me, who raised their hand on the, let me get Butch and then Julio.
Yeah, I'll make it very short. To me, it's the orange ball. And there's been some research done out of Austria that comparing for 10-year-olds in terms of their play. And we still don't know if it means anything that the orange ball player at 10 years old looks more like and plays more like the pros do as yellow ball players. We don't know how important that is, but we just know that it's easier to develop a player on the orange court to get those attributes and to play that game style. It'll be years before we know because it's just, you know, we're so young in that development. Anyway, that's my comments. It's really the orange ball. For instance, France does 1 year on orange and 2 years on green, and with Bernard Pest, I told him, I really feel you got it backwards. It should be 2 years on orange and 1 year on green. Maybe it's 2 years on green as well, but at least 2 years on orange. So I'm very much an orange baller.
That question actually came in a committee, in a call that we had a couple of weeks ago in a committee. And I talked to this with Mike briefly yesterday. I mentioned it to him. I've been fortunate enough to deal with a very talented young boy that played 10 and under orange ball. Then I was fortunate enough to be in a camp for the entire southern section that brought in very good players, talented players in orange ball. And then we did the entire camp with the green dot ball. And what we saw in that camp, and I saw in particular with this boy, it's an all-around player, plays the entire court, has a one-handed backhand, dominates play with the forehand side, and will take balls on the rise and come in, transition, put balls away. It's like watching a top player in the country in 17, 18 years old. Is what he does on the orange court. When you put him in the green dot court, once he got lobbed 2 times because the space enhances and there's more room for the ball to clear him, and he can't cover the overhead the way he does in the orange ball, he stopped coming in. That was the first adjustment that I saw him make on the camp. So then you saw him get a short ball, hit it, and come to the service line and actually stop at the service line instead of actually closing in. When I mentioned that to Mike yesterday, I think you referred to it as he has to learn now how to construct the point so the ball that he's coming in after is one that does not have the option for that lob to kind of come through. It becomes a sitter that's coming over and he's putting away. Did I get that right? So I'm not sure. I don't think that we know, in my opinion, that we know exactly when is the right time to move one or to move the other. But I think in the best world, we just go back and forth and use them as we need to continue to develop skills of the players. That we don't label that it has to be this or it has to be that. But I mean, how many of you, put your hands up, how many of you with your 16-year-olds who can't keep 5 balls in play, with shot tolerance is what I call 4. I call him a 4-baller or a 5-baller to keep the ball in play 4 times, he'll miss. Did you not put him to play with the orange ball? Put your hands up, who's done that? What did that do? They couldn't finish on the point. So you took away all the possibility of them being able to succeed. So I don't think that we need to label it that when do we do it, how do we do it? You'll be expecting someone to come up with a perfect formula, and we are the most imperfect beings probably in this world because we kill others.
Just one point on that. I mean, this is a privileged discussion we're having. I mean, most of you grew up with balls that were months and months old that didn't bounce. That that you had those environments that were different every time you played. So this argument about it has to be this before you go to that and you never go back, to me seems a little privileged, because all of us, I think, grew up with balls that some would be brand new one day and the next day would be flat as all get up, and you had to figure out how to go back and forth, and that's similar to this discussion. So I think it's a fair point that we want to make sure that we're progressing appropriately, but it's that progression and then the regression when we maybe push them up too fast, or for certain positions on the court, you're going to use different balls based on what they can handle. So I think that's the art of what we do. We all want to have a blueprint for success, but there's still an art to coaching, and there always will be.
you know, when we were making the decision a few years ago, whether to go full orange, 10 and unders in the South, my initial thoughts at the time were that eventually we'll evolve, might borrow your term there, evolve into 8 and unders would be orange and 10 and under be green. But now I don't feel that way anymore at all, because evolutionary wise, our children aren't going to be 5, 10 when they're 8 years old. And that's what, as Julio mentioned, you know, we did this orange ball camp, we did doubles, children playing doubles on the 60-foot court. It looks great. I mean, it actually looks better than some of the pros do now, since some of them are staying back. And Mike's daughter played, we've had them at tournaments, we've had them at pro tournaments, demoing. Once we put them on the full court, it doesn't matter the ball. Once we put them on the full court, it goes back to horrible doubles. I mean, it's horrible. They stay back, they don't want to come in, they get lobbed over. They can't play on the full court because they can't cover it physically. So I don't think the ball makes that much difference, to tell you the truth. I think it's the court size. And that's why I changed my mind about, I think we made the right decision to go 10 and under orange. And there's very few players who, okay, Ryan Harrison, 7 years old, plays our sectionals, wins 3 or 4 rounds in the main, 7 years old. He looked like he did at then than he does now. But that's the rarity. I've not seen hardly any other players, Chandler Rubin, Ryan Harrison, not Robbie Ginepri, not Bobby Reynolds, not Melanie Dan, none of those look like that at that age, just a few. So why should we change everything for a few players? And as long as we don't change our rules and hold those players back, you know, some of your sections are doing this earned advancement thing, which I'm totally against. Because the child's 7 years old and they can play 16, fine. Fine. I don't want to hold them back.
One thing I just caution you with a little bit is what creates learning. And you know, why can you, for example, it's very interesting to me, very interesting experiments have been done with babies, with babies on the floor when they put things up on the couch, and they don't put things up on the couch. You know, so one of the things that creates learning is a desire, a motivation, a challenge, right? And sometimes within orange and green, I think sometimes we're guilty of, this is going to sound really back to front coming, especially coming from me. Sometimes we're guilty of wanting it to look perfect. And actually what we want to do is have them experience what it is to play great on the orange court. Now go play on the green court for a bit. Oh my God, I can't do it. Good, that's kicking the learning in again, because that's tennis after all. That's the nature of the guy down the other end is making it difficult for me. Okay, and have that whole challenging environment, safe environment to be able to go between the two a little bit. And that's the thing that Julio was saying. It's about as much as being able to be flexible within those and understanding, okay, you know what? If you've got a kid and you want them to, most of the kids are going to find it very frustrating in a competitive environment. It's the most stressful environment. So that's probably on the court that they want to be least challenged by the court and the ball. They want to go out and be able to do it. You know, the reality of red, orange and green, that if you like, the legacy of the whole thing is that kids will be able to play with their brains, not just their bodies. I always say, I come to America, and I used to come to America, and I used to see very smart kids playing very stupid tennis. Because the ball in the court didn't allow them to do that. Now we have smart kids, because you do teach smart kids, don't you? They're good kids who are well educated, do well at school, in the most part. They're smart kids, so now you get to teach them smart tennis. So there's a whole parameter of, are we looking at allowing the kid the opportunity to use their head, develop tactics, do all of those kind of things, but there is also a parameter of saying, yeah, now I want to throw you into an environment which you're uncomfortable for a few minutes, or for 20 minutes or whatever, and then flip you back again. And that is part and parcel of learning. We like to put things in lovely little neat boxes, but actually challenge yourself to think about, is this kid too comfortable right now? Do I need to push him a little bit? And you can be pushed in different ways in tennis. You could be pushed by your opponent. That might be the challenge. And I mean, you mustn't forget that. If all the kids around you got better, then you're being pushed more on the orange court than you were if the kids at the other end are lesser. So it's not always about moving up the ball, but you have to find challenges for kids sometimes. And going back to Michael's comment, I'll deal with that real quick. He said, I said about not having performance, but actually what I said was everything under 10 is performance. I've never met a kid under 10 who says, when I grow up, I want to be a really crap tennis player. They all aspire to be good, and you have no right to judge any child under 10 and say they are not going to make it or they are going to make it. You do not know. It doesn't matter who you think you are, yeah? You are not Yoda, right? You do not know this. You're not going, this was amazing, right? No, you can't do that, right? You can't do that. You do not know what is going on, right? So the reality is, we'll do Come with the Frog later, right? The reality is very simple, right? Every kid under 10, your job is to inspire them, excite them, motivate them to want to put the maximum amount of commitment and effort into their tennis that they can. And then you will have this whole wealth of kids coming out of this program. It's not about finding one superstar. We do not know who that's going to be. And that's why every kid who wants to come on the court twice a week with me gets the same amount of attention, irrespective of the standard. Every kid who wants to come on 3 times, they've increased their level of commitment, they'll get more commitment from me. It should be based on that. And from that perspective, yeah, every kid is a performance player. It's only when you get in the early teenage years that kids make the decision for themselves, you know what, I don't want to make that extra effort. I want to spend my life in a social environment where I want to go off and do computers or music or something else. Under 10, they're all performance players, or all not performance players, whichever way you want to do it. Okay?
Can I make one quick point related to changing sort of how we deal with some of the communication aspect? We should encourage all of them that they can be phenomenal. You know, when people want to be astronauts and things like that, everyone says that, hey, yeah, that's a possibility. Yet for some reason for tennis, we don't always give them that possibility that, yeah, you can be a professional tennis player, but this is what it's going to take, and you've got to start today, and it's a day-by-day process. So I think if we can encourage them more and really treat everyone as potentially that great next player, that's a great thing. We all understand the difficulties and the realism of it and how challenging it is, but we want to give them that aspirational goal of, hey, if you put good work in and you do the right things, you can be great. We don't know what that great will be, but we got to continue to really encourage them. And unfortunately, a lot of the places I go to and speak to, they're realistic in how they're approaching it, which is a good thing, but they're also somewhat negative in not really giving these people that goal of maybe being great. So it's just a comment related to this.
And just on that note, we used to have, talent ID days, and I've been involved in all of them since day dot, and not only has the process changed immensely on how we run those days, but they're no longer called talent ID days. They're under 8s camps and they're under 10s camps. So I think that's a good thing.
Got a couple of questions back here. Yes, sir.
Bill, this is for you. What, if you take out the Southern for Southerners, if you take out the level 1 and go to level 3s, 4s, and 5s for 10 and under, what are the numbers like now? Like 3s, 4s, 8, 5s compared to what they were with yellow ones? Like, are we up in the 3s? Are we down in the 5s? Are we up in everything? We're down?
Right. Our numbers in the South, I really don't feel are that much higher because we had so much 10s play before. So, we were probably up, and especially we didn't have that many, the only state I knew that had several one-day tournaments was here in Georgia. They actually had these, 12, 15 years ago, they had them here. So I think the number of those have increased, the one-day tournaments, half-day tournaments. But, again, we'd have over 1,000 10 and under tournaments.
So what, I'm talking about participation percentage-wise now versus.
I think it's probably, it's up some. I think we have more playing 10 and unders because they like the format better. I do know that, relating to what Mike and Butch said, we have hundreds and hundreds of players now, 10 and under, that I feel like have very good fundamentals. Whereas just 5 years ago, I wouldn't have said to you that we have 100. We literally have several hundred that have very good fundamentals on that court. And as Mike said, they're able to do it there, and Mark said they're able to do it physically on that court. So I don't feel like, I know some of the other sections are up, but also the other sections, as you saw in that data, have included the green ball. And I'll be honest with you, if I was still teaching back then or now and was lazy like I was before, and you said, well, do you want to do orange or do you want to do green? And I said, I do green, I don't have to put the lines down, I use the same size court, I'd probably do green. And I've got the same players, and I wouldn't have increased the number of 10 and unders enjoyment and their abilities, I feel like. So I feel like the numbers aren't necessarily a lot better, but I feel like the quality of these players, these children's improvement is vastly improved.
Bill, can I just, no, it's for you, Bill.
Oh.
How many or what percentage, because back before when it was all yellow ball, the 10 and under probably played in the 10s, but with the change, how many of the kids that could qualify for the 10s are now playing in the 12s because it's yellow ball? Because that number would have to be added on to the number that you quoted there, because the reality is there's probably more players, but a number of them aren't playing.
That's a good point. Especially 3 or 4 years ago when we made the change, many of the ones who were 10, 9, even 8, who were already playing yellow ball, said, oh, we're playing 12. We're gonna go play 12s because we don't play with them. And we said, it's fine, go ahead. And, we give you that option. We've kind of evolved through that now. So now the generation right now who are 8, 9, and 10, they had red ball. And the next thing for them would be orange ball. And now it's our job to provide more green ball play. I've been resistant to trying to change the 10s. Personally, I pushed for 11s. Everybody knows that category, right? Well, we don't. It's not one that's a common category. We go 8s, 10s, 12s, 14s. But to me, 11s is a perfect category in between 12s and 10s. Leave the 10s like it is. Leave the 12s like it is. We are doing some green ball 12s, lower levels. But I like 11s because it lets children, it's a cut in between the two. So we have some pilots going that are 11 and under green ball.
Can I add something to what Bill said? Because what Bill said, we are seeing though some reverse attrition. We're seeing some kids that come time for like Southern Close, when they understand, the parents look at it and go, okay, we're not gonna be able to qualify and go play Southern Close 12s. So they've been playing 12 and under almost the entire year, and then they go back and play qualifier in 10s and play Southern Close 10s. And I've been heavily involved with that Southern Close 12 10s for the last couple of years because particular players I was working with. And then going into the tournaments, we call them the sleepers. Like, expect a kid that's gonna stand up there in front of you, and it's gonna look twice your size, who's gonna be able to butt the ball back, and you're gonna have to use the front of the court, you're gonna have to use angle, drop shots, bring him in, hit at him when he comes into the net, and we have to come up with tactical adjustments for the unexpected, because there are kids that you've never seen before play 10s.
Can I just say, the real test has got nothing to do with the 10s. It's in 3 years' time what we 14s look like. Will there still be more kids playing for longer? Because 10s is you're not at that stage. Between the age of 12 and 14, you go through this stage where you work out what you're good at in the world. Music, art, sport, language, and that's why when you get to the early stage of the high school, you go into these little cliques, the geeks, the jocks, all those kind of things. So the really interesting thing will be, out of the 10s doing it this way, will you end up with a lot more kids who say, not I do tennis or I take a lesson, but I'm a tennis player. And therefore in the 14s, will your numbers be not just healthier, but better in 3 years' time when this first raft of kids come through? That's the real test. It's not just the instant, gut reaction of what's happening tomorrow. It's what's the legacy of this, and if that's had an effect of the ripple going.
John, you have a comment?
Yeah, I had 2 questions for the panel. And the first one is dealing with rankings. And, what are the positives and negatives of rankings, ranking the 10s, at least at the top end in the panel's view? That's the first question. But then the next question, and Bill hit on it a little bit with the 11s, but would tennis be better served to have every year of junior tennis? So there's 8 and under, 9 and under, 10 and under, all the way up to maybe 15 before you start going into 2-year increments. What would be the plus and minus of that?
I'll say mine very quick. There is no purpose whatsoever to have rankings under 10 unless you want to just piss off a whole lot of players. Okay, so that's basically, if you want to make your pool bigger, smaller, have rankings, that's fine. You get a lot of people who, because it doesn't matter. I did in Mexico last week, I had a
clip of a 100-meter race. didn't tell anyone it was a 100-metre race, so it was the Olympic final. So I lined everybody, got the clip on the screen, set it off, and I said, okay, I want everyone to bet on a runner. Ready? By the way, there's a big guy on the inside lane wearing a Jamaica vest. You can bet on any runner you like. Right? So everybody places their bets, and I press the button to go, and the clip starts, and after 10 metres, the clip stops. At which case, Bolt had been in lane number 1, but the guy number 4 is actually in the lead because Bolt's known for not being the absolute best starter. All right, that's where 10 and under tennis is. 10 metres up the track. So what's the point of ranking this guy if actually he might give up? There really isn't. 10 and under is all about learning. There's no results. We've just taken a modern thing. So for me, there's no value whatsoever. But I do kind of stand on a growth and development side of things, a little bit in Bill's camp, that although I wouldn't have ages all the way through, I've always liked the idea of an 11s. Always liked the idea of an 11s, because I actually think there are some kids who need to be playing green ball and to be challenged that little extra bit. And I like the idea of having an 11s category, but I wouldn't then. I'd have 8s, 10s, 11s, 12s, and then 14s.
I'll give a couple thoughts on them. One, yeah, I agree with Mike with the rankings, partly because they're inaccurate. If you could guarantee a perfectly accurate ranking system, then we could maybe have a discussion. If you're having an inaccurate ranking system where the wrong people are ranked, how does that help anyone? It doesn't help the people that are ranked high because it's wrong, and it doesn't help the people that are ranked lower because it's wrong. And at that age, from week to week, the level changes because of their development. So yeah, it's one of those things that you want some markers of progress though. So that's something different, I think, to ranking. There needs to be markers of progress and success markers that all of us can implement in our own clubs for the players. How are they getting better? What's the motivation for them to get better? So something needs to be in place from that perspective, which I think is really important. The standard of every year sort of divisions, the concept's great. The logistics of it, I think, is potentially challenging. But the concept is really good because especially when they get to 12, 13, 14 with growth and development, 18-month difference in an individual could be equivalent to 6 years. I mean, in their level of development and their growth. So we have to understand that it's probably never going to happen doing a year-by-year system, but we have to understand what that may result in. So I think that was just 2 thoughts on that.
Our kids move September and March, by the way. They move September and March, so the older kids move earlier up through. So we have 2 bands that go September and March, rather than just one cut-off date, January 1st or whatever.
But are you still in the 2-year increments except 11?
No, it's 8s are red, 9s are orange, 10s are green.
Okay.
But I'm not saying it's the right system.
Julio's going to make our last comment before pushing into lunch.
Our ranking system right now is not for the players. Our ranking system in 10 and under, 12 and under, 14 and under is for the parents. And our ranking system is 16 and under, 18 and under is for college coaches.
Butch makes a comment occasionally at a conference that kids compete and parents compare. And so that's, this whole business, we took a big chunk of time in the beginning talking about the parent dynamic. And I would ask that how many of you have a parent orientation where you actually talk to the parents formally up front and talk about expectations and talk about the reality of the long-term development and so forth. I think that's important. But one comment that I would make to all of us here, is a comment I occasionally make to the coaches in Louisiana, is are we creating perpetual lesson takers, or are we creating tennis players? And we're all in the business to teach lessons and make money, but what are we really trying to do? So thank you very much to the panel. Thank you for all.